The last thing she texted her sister was simple. "Tell Mom I'll call after dinner. He's acting strange tonight." At 11:47 p.m., her phone went dead. By morning, the front gate of their mansion in the outskirts of Surrey was still locked from the inside, and the millionaire husband was the one who called the police. But he didn't sound like a grieving man. He sounded annoyed, like someone reporting a broken appliance. Detectives arrived expecting a burglary, maybe a break-in gone wrong. What they walked into instead felt too clean, too controlled. No signs of forced entry. No scattered valuables. No struggle in the living room where she was supposedly last seen. Just a perfectly staged home, and a husband, Marcus Ellington, standing barefoot in a white shirt that looked freshly pressed. Marcus was the kind of man people notice without trying. Tech investor. Luxury property owner. Magazine featured billionaire by 38. The kind of man who shook hands like he was already calculating your worth. And his wife, Elena, was the opposite. Warm. Quiet. A former art curator who had married into a world she never fully belonged to. At least, that's what people thought. Because the more detectives looked, the more cracks appeared in Marcus's perfect life. He said she went to bed early. But the bed hadn't been slept in. He said they had dinner together. But the kitchen camera system had been offline for maintenance at the exact time of dinner. He said she was depressed lately. But her closest friend insisted Elena was planning a surprise anniversary trip. And then came the first real fracture in his story. A neighbor's security camera captured something strange at 10:12 p.m., Marcus dragging a large black suitcase toward the detached garage. Heavy. Awkward. Almost wrong in shape. When shown the footage, Marcus didn't panic. He smiled faintly and said, "That's just old business documents." No one believed him. The garage became the center of everything. Forensics teams arrived and found traces that didn't belong in a billionaire's clean life. Cleaning chemicals used aggressively on the floor. A faint trace of blood near a drain that had been recently scrubbed. And inside the industrial freezer, something wrapped too carefully in plastic sheets. Detectives didn't speak for a moment when they saw it. Because the truth was no longer hiding. It was just waiting to be named. But what shocked them most wasn't only what they found. It was what they uncovered next. Elena wasn't just a wife. She had been quietly documenting everything. Hidden emails. Encrypted journal entries. Bank transfers she had secretly made to an account under her maiden name. And one final message scheduled to send automatically if she didn't log into her email within 24 hours. It read, "If anything happens to me, look at Marcus. Not the man everyone sees. The one behind closed doors." That message changed everything. The investigation peeled back layers of Marcus Ellington's life that no one on the outside ever saw. Debt wasn't the issue. He had more money than he could spend. Reputation wasn't the issue. He was beloved in public circles. Control was the issue. Detectives discovered Elena had recently updated her will. She had quietly separated part of the fortune, nearly $40 million, into a trust Marcus could not access. And she had told a lawyer she wanted to rethink the marriage entirely. That meeting happened 3 days before she died. The night everything unraveled, surveillance reconstructed Marcus's movements in detail. Elena had been home. Marcus had been unusually calm. At 9:40 p.m., neighbors saw the house lights flicker on and off. At 10:05, Elena's phone last pinged from inside the property. At 10:12, the suitcase appeared on camera. And at 10:30, Marcus made a call, not to emergency services, but to his legal advisor. The timing was what broke him. Because it suggested preparation, not panic. When confronted, Marcus finally changed tone. He stopped performing grief. He leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "You don't understand what she was about to do to me." That line was recorded. It would later be used in court. Because it revealed something crucial, not confusion, not shock, but motive. The trial became a national spectacle. The millionaire who once appeared on business panels now sat behind glass, expression frozen as prosecutors laid out a timeline that felt suffocating in its precision. They didn't need speculation. They had digital footprints, security gaps, financial motives, Physical evidence too specific to ignore. And then they had Elena's voice, her words preserved in messages, emails, and that final scheduled note. The defense tried to paint Marcus as a man framed by coincidence and emotional instability in the marriage. But the jury wasn't looking at emotion. They were looking at patterns. What finally broke the case wasn't a confession. It was a mistake. Marcus had claimed he never entered the garage that night after 9 p.m. But his smartwatch data told a different story. Heart rate spikes. Movement logs. Door sensor activation. He had been there. For 37 minutes. Alone. When the verdict came, the courtroom didn't erupt. It just exhaled. Guilty. The millionaire who once controlled boardrooms and investments now couldn't control the outcome of a single decision. And Elena, the quiet wife people thought lived in his shadow, became the center of a story no one expected. Because she hadn't disappeared helplessly. She had prepared. She had documented. And even in death, she had spoken louder than he ever could. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions into the air, but Marcus didn't answer. He just looked forward, expression unreadable, as if still trying to calculate a way out of something that no longer had one. And somewhere in the background of it all, one truth lingered. Sometimes the most dangerous part of a perfect life is how carefully it's been built to hide what's inside it.